this movie called The Fourth Kind, and this movie was it's kind of the title is kind of playing on another movie. A lot of people. I don't know what organization made up these titles, but I don't know if it's these UFO hunters or if it's these extraterrestrial things, or is this a real scientific term that was created by the people in NASA in good old Houston, Texas. I don't know, but they call them close encounters. And I think, how does that go? Close encounters with the third kind, or of the third kind. That means you make actual contact with species from other planets, and so close encounters of the fourth kind would be when you go with them. Yeah, that there's this is focusing on some alien abduction. Yeah, where people claim they were abducted by aliens. And I remember in the 70s that was a big topic. Yeah, in the household that I grew up in, my grandmother was my mother's mother. She used to always buy these yellow journalism. And of course, at that time, I didn't know they were yellow journalism until I saw some crazy headlines. And so I asked my mom, is this real? Yeah, and my mom said, no, I don't think so. She said, well, Grandma likes to read that kind of thing, she said. But I don't think they're true, she said. Like, there'll be just outrageous headlines, like human dog born with human face, or something like that, and just really ridiculous things like the alien baby born, whatever, and the dog boys of Mexico, and all kinds of things, and everything is in some far-fetched country that you can't even pronounce the name correctly, and there's so many things that were just made up, and some of it I think was actually a disease. Yeah, like what they were calling this dog boy in Mexico. Actually, he had some kind of hair disease. Excuse me, that caused normal hair to just sprout from all over his face. It was mostly around his face, and I think the family members. It's really this happened in a poor area, so family members saw an opportunity to make money by putting this guy in a circus. Yeah, poor guy. And things like that. This whole sideshow kind of thing. You know what I mean? This newspaper seems to be like that. What were they called? There was quite a few of excuse me, quite a few of them. There was the National Enquirer. It really had an official title. There was one called what were they called? Excuse me. I think one was called the Globe. I can't remember all their names. Most of them were in black and white. The National Enquirer has some pages in color. But anyway, I remember, in the 70s that this UFO thing was really popular. And, I remember there were like alleged photos taken of a spaceship landing on some mountain someplace way out in the middle of nowhere in Siberia, Russia. And these photos showed, objects it looked like silver suits coming out of a metallic disc-shaped object, and that's supposed to be aliens, yeah. And people just bought this up, they just believe this stuff without question. And that says something about society. And you heard me talking earlier about, establishing peace in your life, and that requires you going within yourself, and as I said earlier, the results are you end up knowing yourself. And so whenever you encounter something new for the first time, you take the time to check it out. Yeah, you take the time to research it. Yeah, and that way you know for sure if is it real or is it just a bunch of BS. But you take the time to check it out. That way you can recognize things when you encounter something like that again. Then you already know it's BS. Yeah. So I'm talking about when you encounter something for the first time that's new. You take the time to check it out because that's what you do to yourself when you establish peace in your life. So now apply that pattern to people who believe everything they read. You see what I mean? That shows that if people don't take the time to check things out, that means this is the way they are to themselves. Yeah? They don't take time to check everything out in their own life, which means they don't really know themselves. So they don't have peace in their life, so they're looking for it outside of themselves, which is the wrong place. Yeah? And because actually the answer is inside of you. And people who are this way are dualistic. They're looking for everything out there. They want something to say that they're right. They need outside validation. They need, they're emotionally insecure, and when they see things like this or read things like this, it really grabs their attention and they believe it as the honest to goodness truth. And whenever you have a dualistic society, most of the citizens are going to be dualistic, and they're going to be like this. And that's how come the world is the way it is. That's why there are so many bullshit businesses that are just making billions of dollars in selling papers like this, and people buy it. And of course they put in a few pretty girls and scantily clad clothes, and in England it's topless, yeah. And because to them in England to be topless is really ooh, yeah. Here in Germany it's like it's no big deal. So anyway, this the topic I remember in the 70s from looking at these newspapers was that see, the reason why I looked at them was because sometimes the page would be folded open and there would be a really pretty girl in there, yeah. So I used to kind of sneak off with them. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, these headlines would catch me on the front cover, yeah, the UFO, a spaceship captured, all this kind of thing, and there were so many stories like that the movie industry began to tap into it. I mean, that always has been a subject, yeah. But in the past, those kind of movies were mostly B movies. The Day the Earth Stood Still, yeah, and Godzilla versus the Flying Saucers and whatever. So there wasn't really a serious movie made like that. Now I'm not that old, so the closest thing that I can remember to being a serious movie about this topic would be Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, maybe there were others before that, but I can't think of them. And the Space Odyssey 2001, that's a little bit different. I think that's a pretty good film too. But I think the Close Encounters of the Third One, I think it kind of tilted a little bit to the B side, but it still was a really good movie, and it really did was a box office hit. It was a box office smash. Yeah. So that really got people's attention. Yeah. And now and then everybody makes claims of seeing things, and I think it's because the mind is at work here. Yeah. That I think the mind can project what's inside of you, so that only you see it, only you hear it, things like that. And I think people might misunderstand some of this. They don't know that the mind can do this. Because, see, this is what Lakota Star Knowledge says. See, we have a ceremony called Hamblecha. And this is, some people say a vision quest, but no, Hamble means to dream. Chea means to cry. So you put those two words together and you get Hamblecha. And what this is when a man goes out on the hill and stands out, he's got to have the help of a whole. He's got to have a helper. Yeah, excuse me, a holy person to help him out, and because see what he's going to do is he's going to journey through his mind without falling asleep, because in our minds have four parts. There's what we see right now. If you're awake and listening to this show, which I'm sure you are. I'm just kidding. No, that's one level. Yeah, and then there's two. The next two levels are in the area of your dreams. Yeah, one area contains memories from ever since you were born. Yeah, and the next area contains memories since when your soul was created up to when you were born. And then the deepest piece inside of you, this is a piece of a creator. Yeah, so there's four levels. When we dream, we're in the two middle levels. So sometimes you may have dreams where you're somebody else. Yeah. Sometimes you may excuse me. Sorry for bumping my microphone here. My nose itches, so I have to pick it for a bit. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes you're gonna get help through there. Sometimes inspiration's gonna come from that creator piece, deep inside of you, and it's gonna come through these middle two levels, and you'll receive it in a dream, or you might receive it when you're awake, and you're doing the most mundane thing. Maybe you're just, washing dishes because you have to, because they're dirty. Yeah. You're washing dishes to get the job done so the kitchen doesn't stink. And bam, out of the blue comes knowledge. You stop and you go, oh, now I understand. Yeah? And it's something that it just hits you. You just received inspiration from that piece. Now, when you live this Lakota Star Knowledge way that I explained earlier, this can really happen frequently. Yeah, because, excuse me, when you live in this healthy way, emotionally and spiritually, that keeps that passageway open. It keeps it clear, so inspiration can come through there, whether you're awake or through dreams. Yeah, but see, the thing is, if you want to, you can go to that. You can, instead of waiting for it to come to you, you can go in that direction, and that's what is men do in the ceremony. Now, remember, I said men. Why do you think I said just men? It's not because men are better. It's the complete opposite. You heard me say something about women having 7 levels of development and men only having 4. Yeah, those four levels that men have, women also have those too, but they have three more. It's internal. Yeah, one of these developments allows women to do this naturally. She doesn't need a ceremony. That's why women are more prone, not all women, but a lot of women are more prone to be intuitive. Yeah, so they don't need the ceremony. They just do it. It's all internal. But men, see, we don't have those three stages. So we have to do that ceremony. Yeah, excuse me, to accomplish this. So that's why I said that. That's a really old Lakota Star Knowledge story that teaches that. Yeah, it's called When the Moon Cried, and it teaches why things are this way. It teaches why men have to do certain things. That they women don't have to do it because it's internal. For us, it's external, so we have to do these things. Yeah, to balance out with women. Do you see what I mean? That's from the Lakota perspective. Now, when you're looking at this information, you have to look at it from the Lakota perspective, because I know most, I mean, I shouldn't say most, I know there are some women who, no matter what I say, they're going to look at it through a feminist perspective. And they're going to say, well, if a man can do it, a woman can do it too. That argument is only true if you can reverse it. That's the only way that argument can be true. And I'll give you one evidence that proves it's not true. If women can do what men can do, men should be able to do what women can do. And we cannot get pregnant. That's not sexist. That's a biological fact. So that argument, throw it out the window. That doesn't work in reality. That's a dualistic thinking. That is woman-made, just like religion is man-made. You see what I mean? Neither of them work. So when you're looking at these kind of teachings, you have to look at it through the way nature sees it, because nature is governing the universe. It's not a god. Yeah? This is why our ancestors observe nature to see how things work. And they see that, it doesn't matter, concerning, just because you do good things, that doesn't mean only good things are going to happen to you. That doesn't mean that. Yeah? Difficulties are going to come to you no matter how you live. But the thing is, if you're emotionally unhealthy, these difficulties will overwhelm you, and they will get worse, and your life will be more difficult than it has to be. But when you're healthy, you're able to face them. As our Lakota people say, as the buffalo faces the storms, just walks right through it. When it gets really bad, he stands still and waits for it to pass. Then he moves on. But he doesn't let the storm blow him around. So we use that symbolism in how we face difficulties. We check it out. We take the time to check it out, as I said earlier. Start learning from it, making the best of it. You see what I mean? That's coming from nature. It's not a man-made idea. That's not a woman-made idea. That's just natural law. That's what nature makes. Yeah? So, these are things I need to add to that. This is why, like I said, with this hombleche ceremony, this is supposed to be men only, and it doesn't mean it's because men are better. It's the other way. It's the complete opposite. Yeah? And women are supposed to naturally have this ability to do that within themselves. They don't need this ceremony because it's inside of them already. They're born with it. Yeah? So, excuse me. Now, when a person is going to do this ceremony, and when a woman does this internally, the process is the same. They're going from the consciousness to this creator piece without falling asleep. That's what's going to happen. Now, once they make the contact, they're going a vision's going to be projected. It's like an internal movie camera, yeah, and it's going to show in front of the person receiving this, and only they're going to see it because it's coming from their mind. Remember, reality begins within, so it's going to come from within, and then they're going to see certain things. You don't need a drug for this. In Lakota culture, there's absolutely no plants or herbs used to do this. We do this naturally. Now, other tribes, obviously, they can't do that naturally. So they need a drug. Now, I don't know why. Because we're all human. We all should be able to do this. Without a drug. Without marijuana. Without cocaine. Without LSD. You shouldn't need that stuff. Yeah? Because in the Lakota way, there's no drugs, no hallucinogens are used in these ceremonies. You do this by nature. You do this naturally within you. You're already built to do this. Yeah? So, when they go in there and you make that contact and you start to see certain things, this is where you need a experienced person. Because when you go through those middle two levels, it's kind of dangerous. And these middle two levels lead into other areas, other dimensions, other spiritual realms. And not everything is healthy out there. Remember what I said one time? You're going to find healthy and healthiness throughout the... I said that wrong. You're going to find healthiness and unhealthiness throughout the universe. There is no heaven. There is no hell. Healthiness and unhealthiness exists throughout the universe in all spiritual planes. And sometimes there's going to be unhealthy energies that are going to try to come through there. That's how they travel. Yeah? So they might try to come through there and do something to you. Now remember, they have access to all your memories because that's your memories are in that area, those two middle levels. So they can see things from your past and imitate it. And you might get fooled by one because they can sound like somebody you knew from the past. And then they trick you and do something in that area, and suddenly you're locked. You can't get rid of it. That is one way people become, what do you call that? That's one way they become mentally ill. When you try to do this ceremony by yourself. This is a danger. And some people go through a traumatic event in their life, and this kind of thing happens. Yeah? Or it might be a fear that suddenly takes on form. And so what you see is really, what you're hearing and seeing is really your fear. And it's going to scare the hell out of you. It could drive you crazy. That's why you need an experienced person to help you through this. Like a holy person. See, when a man is doing this amblecha, the holy person sitting in a sweat lodge at the foot of the hill, and he is seeing what you're seeing. And if something like this tries to, enter your ceremony, this holy person knows how to drive it off. He knows how to back it off so that you don't get harmed, that you don't go crazy. But it's really, really scary. Yeah, because you're going to see things that are going to really freak you out. If you don't keep on your toes, you could go crazy from that. It's a dangerous thing. But if you do everything with the holy person, and he helps you guides you all the way through, the benefit is just really worth it. Yeah. So now, all what I'm telling you about is the procedure of going there. Now, sometimes it can come the other direction. That's what I said earlier. That would be like inspiration. Yeah. So sometimes something could come through there, and the person is unhealthy emotionally. However you are is how you communicate, and that's how you're going to see things in life. So if a person is unhealthy and something comes from there, he's not going to see it as healthy. He's going to see it as unhealthy. Huh? Next thing you know, he's going to run around screaming, "There's demons chasing me," and whatever, and see, it's how he looks at it. Is a reflection of what's going on inside of him. Likewise, when he looks around and sees things, maybe he's sitting on a street and he sees a woman walking, on the street in front of him, and she says hi to him, and then he interprets that as, "Oh, she wants me," and he's real serious about it. She just said hi. She's just being friendly. But he took it a whole different way, because he sees it according to the way he is inside of himself. Now, you take that same way of thinking and apply it to something you see that you don't understand. But you base it on what you know. So when you have a society of dualistic people, remember what I said earlier, in dualism, they don't comprehend the fullness of reality, because Lakota Star Knowledge says there's at least 3 perspectives to everything. They only choose one and reject the other 2. So then they say, there's good and bad. What I accept is good, what I reject is bad. So they see only 2 perspectives, which means they're really rejecting. Out of 3, they're rejecting 2, which means they're rejecting 67% of reality. So when they see something, they're going to define it according to their limited knowledge. So when they see something they don't understand, they're going to base it on what they know, which is very limited, and it would include information like spacemen, UFOs, because of some newspaper they saw, some yellow journalist newspaper they saw. And the story is exciting, it's tantalizing. They tell it to people, and then next thing you know, they add things to it, and by the time the story goes by 10 people, the story has evolved to the point where the guy got abducted, and it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier. Yeah? And this is, it's all because of the way the person sees reality. He does not see reality clear. So he builds up all these things. And like I said, these people who run these yellow journalist newspapers, they know this. They're smart. And they see a way to make money. They see that a lot of people are going to buy these kind of newspapers, and they're right. Because that's how duality works. Duality is, people in that kind of society have virtually no foundation of reality. That's why they're so thick-headed. That's why you can't talk sense into them. You try to explain to them what a healthy relationship is, and you say it using the most simple words you can think of, and they're looking at you with a big question mark over their head. They just don't get it. It's because they're not programmed to. You have to reprogram them first before they can understand it. Yeah? So, when you're looking at that, with everything that I just said here, this is all coming from Lakota star knowledge. Yeah, that tells you that it says that the universe within you is really complex, and that if you're not careful, you could misunderstand something for something else, or I should say, you could misinterpret something, and when you do that, and then base everything on that misinterpretation, it can really pull in a lot of people in a web. That's and they're not aware. That's what religion does. Yeah, this is you heard me say it before. This is a dualism. It's if you don't, hey, this is our God. If you don't believe us, you're going to burn in hell forever. But if you're with us, then you're going to go someplace where you're eternally happy. Yeah, it's just either way, it's keeping you in one emotion. Lakota star knowledge says emotions are part of a learning experience. You're not supposed to live in the emotion. You're supposed to learn from your experiences, so that as you feel these emotions, you express them, then you let them go, you learn from the experience, and you develop emotionally. And that allows you to develop spiritually. So if you don't do that, the emotion gets trapped inside of you, and you cannot develop spiritually. And that's the reason why they come up with these ideas of eternal happiness and eternal damnation, which is, according to Lakota star knowledge, impossible, because it violates natural law. But people use it to control others, to keep you drunk in an emotion. Yeah? So, like I said, it's just like what I was saying earlier with what was I saying? But it keeps you enslaved. Yeah, it keeps you from really spiritually developing. And it all appeals to your emotion. That's a fallacy. Lawyers use that. Yeah, it's a control tactic. So all of that has the same pattern. It's unhealthy. It limits you. It keeps you from yourself. It keeps you from seeing the fullness of reality. And so I think when people, are this way, and then, they really can get creative. The mind is very, like I said, it's very complex. So when a person is unhealthy, a person can really come up with the wildest things. And I think that's where these alien abduction stories are coming from. Because it just violates natural law. Because the fact is, just recently the Hubble telescope has located what most likely is the closest possibility to a duplicate of our planet out there. I mean, not an exact duplicate, but about the same size. It's going around its sun at the perfect distance for there to be life there, just like there is here. And that this planet has been in existence almost as long as the Earth, which means it's highly possible that there are people there, human people. And to get to that planet from the Earth, now this is the closest one. To get from there, to get there from here would require several lifetimes of going at faster than light speed. That's a hell of a distance. And to accomplish that has to be some kind of superior technology. Really advanced. So, if you have those kind of people cruising through the universe, which I totally agree is possible, why would they still use tools like saws to cut people open? I would think if they had that technology to cruise throughout the universe, that they would also have that technology will lend itself into machines where you just scan somebody and you know their makeup. You know everything. You wouldn't even need to abduct anybody. So why? It doesn't make sense. So I really think that this is something that went haywire, and this is a common illness that just has not been identified yet. Because not everything in this world is known, and that includes about the human body, especially the mind. Not everything is known there. Yeah. So when people say this, I think truthfully, it's really a mental illness, and the mind is incredibly powerful. It can influence the body. Do you see what I'm saying here? I'm saying this is how powerful the mind is. It is this way. But we have the will, and that's the key to this. Yeah, is to be able to use that to. That's why I talk about this being in the here and now that I said at the beginning. Yeah, coming to peace in your life, so you're in the present moment. That's the most powerful place to influence the future, because when you're there, see, you're expressing will, you're expressing hope. And it's important to have hope, because if you don't have hope, you're going to project whatever it is that's inside of you. So if you have dread, guess what? That's what you're going to get. Yeah? Because reality begins within you. This is how powerful the mind is. The mind puts things in motion according to the way you are. So if you have hope, you're influencing your future in a healthy way. Likewise, if you're unhealthy and you're living really unhealthy and doing unhealthy things and you're thinking of unhealthy things, that's setting things in motion using that same process. And you're going to see things that may not even be there, but it's because of the way you are. Yeah? And that's unhealthy. Now, even healthy people, something like this could happen, but usually it's because something snapped. Something got rewired in the brain somehow. A person's personality could totally change because of something like this. Sometimes that happens when people get into car accidents. Yeah, they're going into a coma because their mind is protecting them, and when the mind feels it's ready, it's rewired itself so to protect that person. So the person wakes up and don't even remember anything, and the personality is totally different because the mind rewired itself. That's how powerful the mind is. So if we don't pay attention to ourselves, we're going to get some crazy ass thoughts and we might act on them. Yeah? That's why I said it's really important to be in the here and now and to live in that way, because that requires, coming to peace with the difficulties from your past so you can enjoy more of the good memories, and that keeps you in the present moment. So when difficulties come to you, and they still will, because that's nature, then you're better able to face them, learn from them, make the best of them, and continue. And when good things happen, you enjoy them as fully as you can until the next experience comes. All that is influencing your future in a healthy way. You maintain hope. You do visualizations for things that you wish and that are healthy. Yeah, not just for you, but for others too. This is how long distance healing is focused. That's how this happens, through this process. But when you live this way, what you're doing is you're expressing your will to live. and your mind will act accordingly. But if you don't, your mind is still going to do something. And if you're not doing this, then you're like a tumbleweed, just blowing in the wind. Eventually it's going to get caught in the shithole. Yeah? And you're going to start seeing things that are not really there. You're going to start misunderstanding what people are saying. Even though you know the language, you know the words, you just misunderstood. And like I said, something could snap, and you start seeing it's the illness that that expresses itself a certain way, and based on what you see in this experience, your body is going to act accordingly. So spots might show up on your body. Strange markings might show up on your body. These were put here by your mind. They were not put there by some alien clamp that had you spread eagle on some some table while they, were going, what are these two things here? Ding, ding, ding. So that's why I say I think there's a mental illness that hasn't been discovered yet, in which this is what happens. Markings appear on your body, and you don't know what it is. Then people get the bright idea to get hypnotized. In other words, hypnotized. Thinking that they can go into that unlocked portion of the mind to discover what really happened. And that's where it gets dangerous. Because like I said, this is like this vision quest thing, going deep into the mind. If you don't have somebody experienced, you could go crazy from this. And likewise, if you have somebody who only thinks they know what they're doing, they can actually implant an idea in your mind, and you will think that it really did happen, but it didn't. That's the danger of hypnotism. And I think this mental illness expresses itself this way. Yeah? But like I said, if you really look logically at a so-called alien abduction story, there are things that don't make sense. The technology is always inconsistent. And every alien is seen as sadistic, yeah? And I think that's the key right there. It's sadism. Somehow it has to do with sadism. Yeah? So, as I said, a lot of this, what I'm saying to you, is based on Lakota Star knowledge. Anywho, let's continue here. We're talking about this, what people are calling alien abductions, stuff like that, and how a lot of people say that, they woke up one place and didn't know how they got there, and well, actually, that's what I'm going to be talking about next. I think when people are just they just have this, they don't even know, but they have these marks on their bodies. They don't know how they got it. I think that's, what I said earlier, I think explains that. But then there's another thing that sometimes happens, and this is what I already mentioned, was that, they wake up and it's several hours have gone by and they don't even know how they got there, or maybe they're in the same location and they just don't remember anything about what happened. There's several hours missing and they don't know what happened. And some of them go under hypnotism, and like I said, I think this is where you have to be really careful, because I think a lot of times people that claim they can do this, like regression therapy and past life stuff, is that I think people actually put ideas into these people's minds, and they think that they are seeing these things, but it's actually the power of suggestion at work. That this power, the hypnotist is using power of suggestion, and because the mind is really easily influenced at this state, that it will start to form images and scenes and even stories that fall into line to what the therapist or hypnotist is saying, and that's dangerous. And there was a famous case I remember in the early 1980s where a young woman claimed that excuse me, she went into therapy, and they were trying to find out the root of whatever her problem was, and they put her into therapy, and she had all these claims of that her father had molested her when she was a little girl many times, and that these were all repressed memories. And I think the father even went to prison for a while. And then it turned out that they found something that broke the case wide open, and it turned out that it never happened. Yeah, and from what I understood, the girl and her parents never got back together. The girl firmly believes that this happened. The psychotherapist also believes that it happened, but there was biological proof that showed it never happened. And in this case, the psychologist, therapist, hypnotist, whatever, she put the thoughts into the girl's, she put the ideas into the girl's mind, and then the mind just created those ideas into false memories. That's what I wanted to get into. Yeah, false memories is that when somebody puts the idea into you. That's, like I said, I was trying to show you how powerful the mind is, and that this kind of thing can happen. Yeah, where the mind totally can create a story, just really what do you call it? Just really make things like they really did happen. Like they recall it like a real memory, but really it's not. It never happened. Like it was all just power of suggestion. And I think this is dangerous because this shows you that sometimes what we think is the truth isn't. What sometimes we think we regard as something that happened never happened, and that's why I think hypnotism is a very dangerous thing because the mind is so complex that it would be to me hypnotism is like when a baby walks into these what do you call that? These what do you call that? The stores that sell all these glass sculpture kind of things. What the heck is that called? Menagerie or something? I can't remember what that's called. But it's like a baby walking into one of these stores and just bumping into everything. And eventually all of these glass objects just fall all over the place and they all break. And just imagine that store being a mind and the baby is the hypnotist. So the mind is so complex that I really, really, truly believe that therapists don't really know what they're doing. They don't really understand. I think they can be of help in getting introducing ideas to you to think about possibilities of making something out of whatever. But to go into the mind, I think is dangerous. And I think it's dangerous for the therapist too, because the therapist could be counseling somebody um, that maybe is a sex addict, and then the therapist starts getting all this information, and the therapist starts to take on those attributes. The therapist starts to apply that to themselves, and then next thing you know, the therapist thinks he's a sex addict too, because the therapist's mind was not stable. And so now, hearing all this information from a real sex addict, the therapist intakes all this information, and it does something to the therapist's mind. And the therapist ends up fucking up. I've seen this happen before. It happened to someone I was once really close to here in Berlin. Yeah, she was a therapist like this, and she was seeing a lot of her patients were they had something wrong with them. I won't say it just to protect confidentiality, but she took that on, and she thinks she is that way now too. And she's hurt everyone in her family with her new decision. And everyone who's close to her, has broken off because she's become something really unhealthy, even though she thinks she's okay. And I see where she really fucked up, and I see where she what do you call it, transference, but then reverse, yeah, that she's taking on the kind of the disease of her patients. That's sad, yeah, to see that. So you see what I mean? I think, like I said, I think therapists can be of help as long as they don't go into the mind. And I think that pretty much defeats their purpose, doesn't it? But to me, it's more about not the why, but more about the now. And that, for me, it's more like what Lakota Star Knowledge is saying, concerning being in the present moment, being in the here and now, and what do you call it? Beginning healing from there. Because these other things, I think, the mind is powerful enough that once you put in a new battery, meaning a new thought process, these other problems are going to fall into place. Do you know what I mean? It's like the mind. Imagine the mind is like a car engine, an okay car engine, okay? But things are not, there's certain things that are kind of screwing up because of the battery. And so the person just puts in a new battery, and then these other things start working the way they're supposed to work again. And the car's doing fine. That's what I'm talking about. Instead of looking at every little part that's going wrong and saying, wonder what, maybe it needs a new spark plug. Maybe it needs a new water hose. Maybe it needs a new, whatever. These are just small things. Maybe the windshield wiper needs to be cleaned. This doesn't even have to do with that, but some people think like that. Do you see what I mean? I think what a lot of therapists and psychiatrists are doing is they're looking at parts that, yes, there's a problem, but that's probably not the important one. So in other words, they're looking at a car that doesn't run too good, and they're looking at the water hose and saying, well, maybe all you got to do is just change the water hose and everything will be okay. And actually, that's the superficial thing. So they spend all their time focusing on the water hose and And meanwhile, the patient is spending thousands of dollars on this therapy for years, and all they're working is the water hose. They, the therapist really has not tried to find the source, and the source was really the battery. Now, all they had to do was change that battery, and then everything fell into place. Yeah? Spark plug started to fire correctly. Other things down the line all started to fire in correctly. So do you see what I mean? To me, I think it's okay to look at these small problems and acknowledge that, yes, they are there. But I think what's more important is to see what's the source of all this difficulty. Let's go there first. And that means, looking at the analogy of the car, that means you need somebody who's really knowledgeable about car engines, so they know where to look first, instead of looking at the water hose. And right now, I don't think we have that technology to really map out the mind like scientists think they do. Yeah. So, to me, the safest and most realistic and most obvious and logical action would be, when you're concerning the mind, would be the person's will. Yeah, to get that person in the here and now. And yes, that does mean looking at the past, but I think you got to be. Sometimes the body, is not ready to face that difficulty. Maybe that trauma is so bad that the body's not ready to face it yet. So the mind blocks it off. That's for protection. So that you have to wait, that person has to wait until they're ready. Because if they face it now, it might overwhelm them, they might go nuts. So they have to take their time on this and face it when they're ready. They will know. But to make sure they know, keep them healthy in all other areas in their life. That gives them confidence. Healthy, realistic expectations. And then they're going to feel internally when they're ready to face what's still underneath. But you let them go at their pace. Because if you force it on them, it's like putting somebody on a horse who's not ready to ride yet. The horse is going to pick up on that and freak out too. And it's not going to work. So you don't force anybody to face their difficulties, especially these extreme ones. You can guide, but they have to make that decision when to do that. But as soon as the therapist starts doing that for them, I think that therapist has crossed the line. Now the therapist is oppressing the patient. See, I'm not 100% sold on psychotherapy. But I do believe there are some good people working in there that have good intentions and good ideas. But once a person starts to push the patient into doing something, then I think that's crossing a boundary. And I think hypnotism falls under that, by trying to push a person to remember things. And they're probably not even true memories. They're probably false. See, the mind is really powerful. The mind will protect. So I think that needs to be shown some respect. So when these people go under hypnosis and they say, they start describing the spaceship and stuff like that, and I think this is the mind protecting. That there's something actually underneath all of that. Yeah, it's not a alien abduction. It's something different. That in some situations that might be what the mind is using to protect what's really under there. And where does the mind get the idea for alien abduction? It comes from the person themselves, by what the person has seen in newspapers, yellow journalism. See, this mental disease has always existed. It's as old as humans are. So I think it changes. What they see, I think it changes throughout time because it's always based on what they're familiar with. So no, they did not get on spaceships. They did not, um, cruise here and there and stuff like that. But they did experience something, and this is covering something up. They created this story. The mind created it, but it didn't really happen. The mind can fool you. Especially if you're not healthy, you're going to misinterpret things. You will trick yourself. So, like I said, there's too many inconsistencies for me to believe that this is a real thing. And if you notice, as we become more technologically advanced, these stories have decreased through time. Yeah, they have really decreased, these encounters, these photos, because now we have video editing equipment and software that can do amazing things, that can present something as real, but it really isn't. So, anyway, we'll slowly close up the shop here. There is one that's really interesting, though, but I'm not 100% sold on it. And this one involves this one happened in I don't know if it was the 1960s or 1970s, but it was an interracial couple, which back in those days, that was really looked down upon in American society when a black man marries a white woman. Yeah, that was really frowned upon back then, and in many places it still is. Anyway, they think this took place in Massachusetts or Maine, somewhere in the New England area of America. And this couple were driving back from someplace, or they were going someplace, and they saw a light in the sky. And I can't remember exactly how it goes. I can't remember if they pulled over to the road and were deciding to watch this. And there was a police officer there too, coming the other direction, and he saw it too. So the three were looking at it, and the next thing you know, they're sitting in their cars and they're waking up all around the same time. And the guy thought he blacked out or something, or fell asleep, and he didn't know what happened. And they came, they got out of the car and they were like, "How did we get here?" Yeah, and the wife didn't know either. And they looked at their clocks, and there's a couple hours went by, and it seemed like it was only a few minutes ago. So they had no idea what happened. Now, what I don't know, because it's supposed to be a true story, I don't know where they get the idea, but they decide to get hypnotized to try to find out what happened to these 2 hours. And what comes out of both of them is basically the same thing, that they were taken aboard a spaceship, and they were permitted to walk around, and then it brought them back. But I don't know if it did something to them or whatever, but they recall seeing a diagram that showed the solar system when viewed from another location. They drew it on a paper, and it is and they show it to scientists. They say, yeah, that's correct. If they really were in that direction, they would see it exactly this way, they said. But they don't recall. Yeah? So that one was a tricky one, but you know what? I think today it's more than possible. You take a look at where the Earth is in relation to other stars and planets and stuff like that. And I think even without a computer program, I think even if you know the position of things, you can recreate the appearance of this from different angles. You just have to be a little bit smart about it. So it's not required to get abducted and put on a spaceship and fly 100 trillion miles away and look at the universe or look at our solar system from a certain angle, and then I just don't think that's necessary. That if you really know the position of things, I think you can recreate this on your own, hand drawn. And I think that idea just did not occur to people back then. So if somebody does this, and then people could be really amazed by it, because nobody thinks of doing something like that. But today we have that technology to do that from anywhere, to recreate these images. And it's nothing. But 40 years ago, I think we still had that ability. It's just that nobody did it. So when somebody does it, everybody's like, wow, how did you do that? Gee, you must have been taken aboard a spaceship to see it like that. It doesn't even dawn on them that it's possible to do that without being abducted. So as time goes on, I'm starting to think more and more that this is a hoax. That this was a way to, it was a good movie. James Earl Jones was the husband, and the lady who played Roseanne's mom was the wife. She was young back then. Roseanne, that American comedy. Anyway, I think a lot of what's in the media concerning this is not true. So I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I think most of what's out there is not true because, number one, society is dualistic. Global society is generally dualistic, which means people don't know themselves, which means they never took the time to check themselves out. And how you are to yourself is how you are to the rest of the world. So if you don't know yourself, that means you didn't take time to check yourself out, come to peace, which means you don't do that with other things around you, which means you'll believe anything. If it sounds exciting and enticing, you will believe it as the truth. And I think that's the problem. And I think that's what's really going on. Yeah. So the hypnotism, I'm 100% not bought. I really said that wrong. I don't buy hypnotism 100%. I think you have to be really careful because it's the mind is so in that state. The mind is so impressionable, very easily impressionable, that it will conform to what the therapist is saying, thereby creating false memories that are not really repressed at all because they never were there to begin with. Yeah. So this is just something I'd like to let's let you think about that. Yeah. I'm not going to. I don't want you to agree with me or disagree with it. It doesn't matter. I just like you to consider this information, nothing more. And but know this, that I'm basing this on Lakota Star knowledge. That I'm basing this on Lakota Star knowledge concepts of the mind, and that if we're not careful about this, we can really mess ourselves up. And there is no fixing it. Once that damage is done, that's it. Yeah. You just have to take a chance because it's I mean, after the damage is done, you just have to try to make the best out of it. But to try to damage it again, to try to fix it, may only make things worse. Like I said, it's like a baby going through this a store selling glass figurines, and it's just touching this and that falls, and touching another thing and that falls, and the baby doesn't know what it's doing. And next thing you know, the shop is destroyed. That's like the mind. That's like a therapist trying to, using hypnotism, trying to fix things, and actually the therapist is fucking things up. So you have to be careful with that. Lakota Star Knowledge says that the most important moment is now, the present moment. Yeah? So you apply that to everything, including your life. That what happened in the past is done now. If you've come to peace with it, then you let it go. The only time you need to be concerned about it is when it's still bothering you, when you have not come to peace. Then you're keeping it. To truly let it go, you have to face it and come to peace with it. Then it leaves, and then you have peace. It doesn't bother you anymore. Yeah. So that means that this lifetime is the most important one. And if you believe in reincarnation, the previous lifetimes, they're finished. They're finished, and you live this one as healthy as you can. So in other words, it's saying that whatever you did in your past life, if this is true, whatever you did in your past life, that's over now. It only affects that life. It has no effect on the current one. So in Lakota Star Knowledge, there's, being cursed for 4 generations, or some people think that, they're born, deformed or something, and then they believe that this is a punishment from a past life. This is false. That would disobey nature. To believe something like that is controlling, which comes from duality. Yeah, because it's letting you have an excuse to be irresponsible for your life. Lakota Star Knowledge says that all that doesn't matter. What matters is the present moment. And when you live in these principles, you are taking responsibility for your life. Thereby, your communication is going to reflect that. It's going to be nurturing. It's going to be healing. It's going to help others, including yourself. That's the way to live. So whatever happened before is done. And you take what you have now, you discover your talents, and you use them. And all you be concerned about is with your life now. Because that's what influences the future. So people who like to go to these so-called past life regression therapies, you're wasting your money, because a lot of that is not really true. A lot of that is just put in there by wishful thinking. Your wishful thinking, like a fear, can project itself into something you hear, something you can see, but it's not true. And it's not real. That's how powerful the mind is. Yeah? So sometimes in these level 2 and 3 areas, these two middle areas of the mind, sometimes there, you will meet somebody. And you might meet several times. And you're totally unaware of it. Because it's only happening in the level 2 and 3 areas. That you meet somebody in that area while they're asleep. You're asleep, they're asleep. And see, those two areas, they never go to sleep. They're always awake. Even when you're awake, they're still awake. They never fall asleep, those two middle areas. So you could be making contact with somebody in another part of the world through there and be totally unaware of it. You have no clue it's happening. And suddenly, out of the blue, you go to some event and you accidentally bump into somebody. You end up making eye contact, and it's like you know each other. Oh, what have we here? It's like you already know each other, and the chance is really high that you do already know each other. It's in that level 2 and level 3 area, the middle 2 areas of your mind. There already is a connection. You've already met in that area. It's just that your physical bodies have never met each other in your conscious, awake state. But there's something that says that person is just familiar to you. That's again, part of this attributes of the mind. And sometimes you may have the same dream with somebody. That is also where this happens. That those middle parts where the dreams are, they connect. You might connect with another person, and both of you might have the same dream. That's all coming from Lakota Star knowledge. And that's all based on this concept of the 4 parts of the mind. Yeah? Isn't that interesting? Anyway, I'll leave that with you to think about. And I thank you very kindly for taking time to tune in and listen to the show. It's Sunday, and I really appreciate you taking time to listen, whether it was live or as a recorded download. I thank you for that. I honor you. And I wish you a good rest of the day, morning, night, evening, wherever you are, whenever you're listening to this. Good night, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Have a nice day. Sweet dreams. Have a good meal. Have a nice walk. Whatever you're going to do next. And I'll be back here tomorrow. I don't know the time yet, yeah. But I will announce it on my Facebook timeline, and also on this Blog Talk show page. We'll also have the time for that, okay? So again, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and patience, and for listening into the show, because I really enjoy doing this show for you. It makes me feel good too. Yeah, it reminds me of things. It's always good to come back to something you've already learned. It's always good to come back to that because in time you change. And so when you go back, see, you have different eyes. Your eyes can see more than it could before. So when you look at something you learned in the past, you end up learning something new again. That's non-linear style learning. That's part of the Lakota Star Knowledge perspective. Yeah? Just think about that. So as a result, we don't have a word for goodbye, yeah? Because for us, time doesn't just go in one direction. It goes all kinds of directions. But it doesn't stop. There is no end. So we always come back around. It's circular. So we don't say goodbye, yeah? So instead we say something like, until next time, which is Tok Sha'ake.